Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming in our midst the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta, Senator Godswill Akpabio. Sir, you're most welcome.
Good morning and welcome to the live broadcast of this town hall physical and virtual meeting to address the destruction of oil and gas infrastructure organized by the Ministry of Information and Culture. It is a well-known fact that Nigeria is an oil-endowed state, making the nation a petro-dependent economy. This is because oil wells and petroleum resources account for over 75% of Nigeria's foreign exchange earning. The petroleum sector, thus, justifiably, is the mainstay of the economy. Unfortunately, indices of petroleum pipeline vandalism in Nigeria have spiraled over the years. The alarming occurrence and trajectory of petroleum pipeline vandalism as well as crude oil theft in Nigeria has caught the attention of policymakers, the international oil companies, IOCs, and even the international community. This no doubt necessitated a town hall meeting organized by the Ministry of Information and Culture to chart a way forward. Welcome to the live broadcast. My name is Lydia Sampson, and I welcome you on behalf of all my colleagues behind the screen, working assiduously to make this live broadcast a success.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and we now all rise for the national anthem. Thank you. Can we still remain standing, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen? You know our country is a prayerful one. We'll have to submit this to Almighty God for us to have a very successful outing. So we'll check the second stanza of our national anthem. And at the count of three, I request that you recite after me. 1, 2, 3. O God of creation, guide our leaders right, help our youth the truth to know, in love and honesty to grow, and living just and true, great lofty heights attain, to build a nation where peace and justice reign. Thank you. Can we be seated? The Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, may I request our service chiefs to please take the front row. And may I also request the DG Noah to please come forward to the front row. The DG NTA, please come to the front row. Please go ahead. And for those who are seated a little bit behind, please move forward. I have earlier requested that those who are seated far behind there, please occupy the middle seats. Please write it. The Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, the Honorable Minister of Petroleum Resources, State, ably represented by the GMD NNPC, the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, the Honorable Minister of Environment, members of the National Assembly here present, particularly the representative of the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the Chairman, Senate Committee on Information, the GMD NNPC, stakeholders in the oil and gas sector, particularly we have here Shehu Bello, who is representing the Shell, Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria, service chiefs, and representatives of the IGP, all directors general under the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, SA to Mr. President on Information and Culture, attached to the Honorable Minister of Information, Senator Eta Enang, Special Assistant to the President on Niger Delta Affairs. The Federal Permanent Secretaries here, particularly the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, and the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen of the press. A very good morning and welcome to this town hall meeting that will be discussing and addressing the issue of destruction of infrastructure in the oil and gas industry. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, you know this destruction has a very big economic implication for our nation, for our revenue base. The destruction, Your Excellencies, affects this country so badly. It is in this regard, Your Excellencies, that this particular topic is lined out for discussion today in this town hall meeting, which is taking place at the NAV Conference Center in Kado, Abuja, to address these issues. And the reasons why we are looking at it is to sensitize Nigerians, to encourage and appeal to Nigerians to take ownership of these infrastructures so that it is safeguarded. So, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to also take note of the fact that we are live on NTA, FRCN, Voice of Nigeria, and other social media platforms in order to allow those who are not here physically to join us. So without taking too much of your time, may I now invite the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, who is the chief host and moderator of this program, to please come forward and address the gathering. Honorable Minister of Information and Culture.
Thank you very much. I noticed that when the GMD of NNPC's name was announced, the ovation was louder. Thank you very much. The president of this. Thank you very much. One day we shall have money in our own ministry too. The president of the Senate, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the chairman, my own chairman, Senate Committee on Information, National Orientation, Ethics and Value, Senator Danda D. Sankara, who is always there for me. I thank you very much for being here, sir. I know I spoke to various chairmen of Senate committees, especially on the NDDC, on the Niger Delta, on the petroleum resources downstream, and also the chairman House Committee on these subcommittees, and I had the agreement that at least 5 or 6 of them will be here today. I believe that they will still show up. The Special Advisor to Mr. President, Mr. Enang, who's here, representatives of the service chiefs, Permanent Secretary, especially the PS Information and Culture, the various DGs of the parastatals under both the Ministry of Niger Delta and the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, the DGs under the Ministry of Information and Culture, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press. Please pardon me if I've missed out anybody. We're all very, very important. I welcome all our invitees to this town hall meeting. The second in a 3 town hall meeting series that started here in Abuja on the 7th of June, 2021, to address the vandalism of public infrastructure in the country. I thank you all for honoring our invitation. In particular, I want to most sincerely thank my colleagues, honorable ministers, for being here despite their very tight schedules. And of course, our bosses, the distinguished senators, and honorable members of the National Assembly. I thank you for being here. As I said earlier, the first in this series of town hall meetings on protecting public infrastructure was held on Monday, the 7th, and was focused on vandalization of railway tracks, roads, bridges, as well as removal of manhole coverings and destruction of power infrastructure, among others. It was a successful outing that revealed that the issue is even more serious than earlier thought. Today, our focus is on the destruction of oil and gas pipelines, while the third and the last in the series, which we plan to hold in Maiduguri, will focus on the vandalism of power and telecommunication infrastructure. Before dwelling on today's topic, let me remind this gathering that the Ministry of Information and Culture kickstarted the Town Hall meeting series in Lagos on April 25, 2016, to provide a platform for the federal government to regularly give account of its stewardship to the people and get their feedback with a view to enhancing citizens' participation in governance. This, I'm proud to say, is the 20th edition. Today's town hall meeting on protecting oil and gas infrastructure is very important considering that the destruction of this infrastructure has socio-economic and environmental implications. With oil providing about 80%, sorry, today I'm told that it's actually about 70% now of Nigeria's budgetary revenues and about 80% of foreign exchange earnings, one can only imagine the impact of the incessant destruction of oil pipelines on the economy. I do not intend to take the wind out of the sail of the experts who will speak on this issue. But with an average of 200,000 barrels per day loss to the wanton damage to pipelines and a huge amount of about 60 billion naira yearly to repair and maintain the vandalized points, one can only imagine the impact on the economy. According to statistics, between January 2019 and September 2020, 1,161 pipeline points across the country were vandalized. Apart from the impact on the nation's earnings, consider also the environmental problems caused by the incessant vandalism in terms of fresh water pollution, air pollution, soil pollution, etc., and you will appreciate the enormity of the problem at hand. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, what do we aim to achieve with these town hall meetings, focusing on the protection of public infrastructure? Our objectives are: A, create in the public mind that government property are indeed citizens' property and so must be protected for the benefit of all. B, sensitize communities, especially those where infrastructure are located, to be conscious of the import of such and protect them. C, expose, arrest, and prosecute all those who engage in buying pilfered infrastructure items, along with those who bring such to them to sell. And D, sensitize the larger citizenry to support the widespread campaign on the protection and ownership of public infrastructure assets, especially in railway, roads, aviation, telecoms, and, of course, oil and gas. Please remember that public infrastructure is at the very core of economic growth and national development. Therefore, the destruction of public infrastructure by some unpatriotic Nigerians call for great concern and immediate action. Hence, our decision to organize this town hall meeting series. It is common knowledge that Nigeria has long suffered massive infrastructure deficit due to decades of neglect, population explosion, and the absence of maintenance culture. But since coming into office in 2015, the Muhammadu Buhari administration has embarked on a rapid economic growth with equity, i.e. people-centered economic management, as well as prioritizing human capital development through enhanced social services and infrastructure development. Despite a drastic drop in revenue and competing priorities, especially that of tackling insecurity, the administration has invested heavily in providing new infrastructure in addition to reconstructing and rehabilitating existing ones. To have such laudable efforts of government thwarted by unpatriotic citizens through wanton destruction of critical infrastructure is totally unacceptable. To have railway tracks subjected to wanton destruction, bridge railings removed, manhole covers pilfered, street lights and other power infrastructure, oil pipelines, telecoms facilities, and critical aviation infrastructure damaged or stolen do not augur well for our growth and development. Apart from endangering the lives of fellow innocent citizens, such unpatriotic acts take a toll on the government's limited revenue as it seeks to replace, rehabilitate, or totally reconstruct such destroyed infrastructure. Let me round off by reminding us all of this administration's massive investment in infrastructure since coming into office, despite dwelling resources. With far less resources, the administration has recorded more infrastructural development than was achieved by other administrations. As this government strives to bridge our nation's infrastructural deficit, we must do everything in our power to stop the wanton destruction of public infrastructure. On this note, I want to once again thank all our invitees and panelists, and I wish us all a successful meeting. Thank you very much. The EMD is representing the minister.
Then you're still on to the live broadcast of the virtual and physical meeting on protection of critical oil and gas infrastructure. Indeed, the Nigeria's pipeline infrastructure has been subjected to incessant attacks by militants and pipeline vandals across the country. The frequency of such attack has been very alarming, which is affecting all fabrics of life and the country's economy as a whole, as we've just heard from the Minister of Information and Culture. And this is making investors domestically and even internationally to be losing interest in the country's oil and gas sector due to the security implication and effects on power generation, as well as decline in profit and general socio-economic development of the nation, which is making it difficult for business organizations to achieve their goals of business, of being in business. It is the hope of critical stakeholders here that this town hall meeting will be part of efforts at finding a lasting solution and making Nigerians own this critical infrastructure as stakeholders in protecting them.
The DGs of the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, who have always informed Nigerians through their various channels on what is happening and what is going on. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have Chidi Amadueke, the NFC DG, who is here. Malang Ahmed Mohammed Ahmed, DG National Troop. We also have the DG FRCN, Liman Mansour, the DG Von Osita Okechukwu, and the SA to the Honorable, to Mr. President, who is attached to the office of the Honorable Minister in the person of Mr. Shegun Adeyemi, who are all here with us. They are being led here by the Permanent Secretary whom I introduced earlier. And I have also recognized earlier the presence of Dr. Babayo Ardo, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, who is also here with us. So, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, you're all most welcome. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the panelists for this town hall meeting are as follows. We have here with us the Honorable Minister of Petroleum Resources, Street, that is ably represented by the GMD of the NNPC in the person of Mele Kyari. Sir, you're most welcome. We also have somebody that really doesn't need an introduction, but for the purpose of this, we will introduce him. He's the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, a former governor. We also have the Honorable Minister of Environment in the person of Mohammed Mahmoud Abubakar, who is equally here with us. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we equally have amongst us here the representative of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation in the person of Dr. Maurice Mbare, is the Permanent Secretary General Services Office. Dr. Maurice, you're welcome. We also have Prince Suleiman Tanko Abubakar Galadiman Karshi. He is representing the Sarkin Karshi, Emir of Karshi FCT. That's Dr. Ismaila Mohammed. Sir, you're most welcome. So, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Petroleum Resources, Beatrice Buka Nabasu, MNI, is also here with us. Sir, you're most welcome. Nabasu, you're welcome. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, I will continue to recognize your presence as soon as your protocol officers send in your names. But for now, let us really go into the program proper. So may I, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, request the moderator and the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, to direct the affairs accordingly. Honorable Minister, sir.
Thank you very much, distinguished guests. Once again, I want to personally recognize Senator Koromadu. This is because I called him at about 10 p.m. yesterday evening to remind him about this meeting, and he was in Enugu, and he promised he will come with the first part. I thank you very much for honoring this invitation. Thank you very much. I think we should just make short work of this program by inviting the Group GMD of the NMPC, who is representing the Honorable Minister of State Petroleum Resources, to please give us his presentation. Thank you very much, sir.
Honourable Ministers, distinguished senators, let me stand on another very distinguished ladies and gentlemen here. Let me stand on the existing protocol. There's any word like that to save your time. First of all, let me state that the Honourable Minister of State would have been here, but as we speak now, he's attending an OPEC meeting to curtail production of oil or to expand production of oil. The objective today is to expand production of oil, to increase production because of what all of us must have seen. There's a very significant hike in the price of petroleum in the market, and that needs to be contained because as it gets too high, it also becomes a problem for the globe. And that's very connected to what we are doing today. So you can decide to increase production. You can decide to increase production, but you may not be able to increase production. And I think this underscores the very essence of this gathering. So why won't you be able to increase production when we want to do it? There are two issues. One, on the investment, you may genuinely not be able to put your money into it. And the second issue is, even when you have the money, you may not be able to do it because the act of vandals can actually stop you from increasing your production. This is clearly a challenge in our environment. But let me also not dwell on bad news. No, it's not all bad news. I can confirm to you that from 2015 to today, in relative terms, we have a much, much more clement Niger Delta. We have far less incidences of vandal action on our facilities and our assets. That means that impact of the act of attack on our facilities, the significance of that attack has diminished very, very significantly. And this also didn't happen from the blues. There were a number of engagements both at the national, at the sub-national level, including members of the armed forces. And we thank them, they are here, that's why I'm mentioning this. There's significant collaboration between the agencies of government and the other agencies of the security outfit of our country, from the Nigerian Army, Nigerian Navy, the Air Force, Department of State Service, and very many other institutions of government that are involved in helping us to curb the incidences of vandal activities. But when you lose production, there's something also that's a bit more complicated, which is that you have two sets of vandals. There are people who are genuinely aggrieved, and there seem to be activism. They are very different from those who attack this pipeline just for the sake of doing it or for the purpose of stealing. So the combination of the two becomes a national problem. I think that's why we're having this conversation here. And what do we need to do? And I think the numbers speak. I have some slides. I don't know if we can see it. Control, can we see it? Can you just go to the next page? I don't know if all of us are seeing it. It is to have in context, what do we really have? Today, we have over 1,700 kilometers of backbone transmission infrastructure of oil and gas pipelines. We have over 5,000 kilometers of pipeline network for product alone. We have over 21 fuel depots spread across the country owned by the state. NNPC itself owns over 575 retail stations. There are over 35,000 retail stations we have in the country owned by everybody. And of course, to get this infrastructure work, you have over 25 pump stations across the country helping us to get our products across the country. I think it's good to have this context that this is really what we are seeing. And of course, this excludes the other facilities, the oil terminals, the production platform, and very many other assets that are required for us to produce oil and also to distribute finished petroleum products across our country. So we call all of them oil and gas asset and infrastructure. And they all need the protection and the care that they deserve. But this chart on the screen that you are seeing just tells you the story around. That's why I say it's much better situation today. In 2014, we have 623 incidences of attack on our pipeline. But today in 2020, you only have 94. That is recorded, that is of value. In terms of value, because when you have those attacks, they defy your production, and you have issues around revenues that comes in. So that's very obvious to all of us. You can see that in 2014, the value, because prices are different, mind you, but despite this, the losses that we can account arising from acts of vandal attacks amounts to about $2.6 billion in 2014. But in 2020, because of the current price level, even though the incidences are less, the production losses are much lower, but we still lost up to $1.5 billion of net government revenue from the vandal attack. So it's quite significant, and that the more you take actions to bring this down, the more it becomes of value to all of us. Next, Aisha. Then I think these are just pictorial for you to see that what this happens. These are very recent pictures around our operational areas. Once there's a vandal action on our facilities, it pollutes the environment. It creates a new set of problems for us. I'm sure my Honorable Minister of Environment is here, Nostra, that every day we deal with these incidences of how this affects the environment. So we stop worrying about revenue and we start worrying about our environment, what it means to this community. Many of them are very innocent, and they can't find clean water to drink. They can't go to their farms, and therefore that becomes our primary objective. But it's real, it's happening. In most cases, it may not necessarily be about the acts of vandals. Sometimes we also own up. There are integrity issues in our environment. Many of our pipelines are very old, 20, 30-year-old pipelines that should have been replaced. We couldn't do it. So at that pressure, they give up. So sometimes it's very difficult to distinguish between the acts of vandals at the first instance with that of real integrity issues. So as soon as incidences happen, we go into the field to discover what exactly we are dealing with, and we try to isolate them. So we're dealing with two problems. One is integrity issues, and then the second, the acts of vandals. And the pictures here shows you clearly that this is really happening. But of course, I also confirm that it's much more smaller scale. Go next. And this doesn't also stop at the crude oil production facilities. That's why when we say our oil assets, we're also talking about the downstream assets. Today, the most significant asset that we have that is operating is the Atlas Corp facility all the way, the pipeline into Mosimi, into Ibadan, and then it terminates in Ilorin. That is a major trunk line that delivers over 10 million liters of gasoline into the hinterland from our telescope. But it's very challenged. And I'm also happy to say that after the intervention of the Nigerian Armed Forces and other security agencies, we cut down the losses from that line from as high as 20% to now current level of about 4%. This is quite significant. And of course, losses are losses, but there's significant progress that we have achieved. The pictures you are seeing are people who take products from our pipeline, that is a year ago, and some of the pictures are recent, but the end result is that we're able to contain this, but it's happening, and people are actually taking advantage of the very nature of the existence of this pipeline to take advantage. It is also happening it's part of the infrastructure that we are managing, and we're also trying to put all the structures necessary to make sure it's contained. But I can confirm, again, that in relative terms, when you are losing 20% and you are down to 4%, you know that you have made progress, but it's possible also to bring it to zero or bring it to industry standards of less than 0.5%, which is acceptable tolerance limit in the industry. So we're working towards that. There's an ongoing process by the Chief of Defense Staff and his associated agencies, including the Department of State Service, the EFCC, and all of us, to make sure that we bring this to the tolerable level. And of course, that is working. Above this, there are much wider engagements that are going on, spearheaded by the Ministry of Petroleum Resources and also the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs and very many other agencies of government to put a very, very inclusive structure that will both address the social problems associated with why this happens in the first instance and also the criminal elements of it, which has to be contained by the government security agencies. And those engagements are paying off. Can you go again? And of course, including our fuel stations, just to put it in context, that during the NSAS incidences, people actually decided to attack fuel stations owned by the NNPC. We still see them as our assets. They are the most practical presence of NNPC in this space. And we know that in some instances, ordinary people actually attack some of our facilities. And we're taking every measure possible to make sure that we contain that. But it does happen in times of crisis. So, and then go ahead. Yeah, so there are piracy issues. This may not be attack on oil facilities, but it does have impact. There's increasing cases of piracy, which is now being also contained. I also must confirm the incidences are gradually going down. It is not zero. The West African coast is now becoming a major area of pirate activities. It's flagged in the international circles. But in terms of incidences, these are going down, but it's still a challenge for all of us. But it creates two things. First of all, it increases premium on freight that comes to this area. And it also makes it difficult for us to get certain vessels to come into our country. And of course, this is also being resolved through the intervention of the Federal Ministry of Transport, the Nigerian Navy, and other agencies of government. Can you go ahead? And to finally say that the issue of attack on oil and gas facilities is a concern for all of us. It affects all of us. But something can be done by all of us by communicating appropriately, which the Honorable Minister of Information is doing now. And thank you very much for taking this initiative on our behalf. And most importantly, the concerted effort by government security agencies is very critical in containing this. And thirdly, but more importantly, engaging the communities through the most inclusive manner for them to see the stake in what we are doing, how it is be of use to the host communities so that those host communities can take a role in it. And that's why I'm also happy to say that the Petroleum Industry Bill has a provision to bring in the host communities into this loop. We have said it over and over that we haven't done well taking care of the host communities as a country. There are a number of subnational and national structures designed to take care of the host communities. It hasn't worked very well. But I know that efforts are put differently today. Honorable Minister of Niger Delta is here. And very many on the intention. But more importantly, the provisions on the Petroleum Industry Bill on the host communities will go a long way in curbing some of these incidences, and we'll do everything possible to make it work. Otherwise, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all ministers and distinguished senators, I'm happy to say this, and I'm available to add further comments if necessary. Thank you, distinguished Senator Karomadu.
We thank the GMD NNPC, Melekari, for his presentation. And we'll thank you for your honesty in what you feel is happening in that sector. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, can we once again put our hands together for the GMD of NNPC, who has ably represented his Honorable Minister of Petroleum Resources State. Thank you, sir. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I recognize the presence of the Chairman House Committee on Culture in the person of Honorable Obiede Ihema Omerigwe. Sir, you are most welcome. We understand you have been seated here much earlier than now. We apologize for our inability to recognize you earlier. We also welcome in our midst the Executive Director, National Film and Video Censors Board, in the person of Mr. Adebayo, who is also here with us. You are most welcome. So, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I now revert to the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture to give us the next panelist who will address this audience. Honorable Minister, sir.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether when I was conferring with the Special Advisor to Mr. President, Senator Yang, whether you properly recognized my chairman of House Committee on Culture. You know, he's my boss. Thank you very much, sir.
I did.
Thank
Senator Yang, I did earlier.
No,
you're most welcome.
I'm talking about my chairman, House Committee on Culture, Prince Ihama.
Ihama, yes, I have just done that, sir.
Thank you. You see, I'm just securing my position. Thank you.
I understand. Otherwise, the votes won't come.
Thank you very much.
Well
I'm told that we also have representative of the Senate President here. You are placed very well recognized. Thank you very much. I think we now please just invite the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs to please make his own presentation. I thank you very much.
Our host, the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, my colleagues, the other ministers here present, very distinguished colleagues from the National Assembly, including my boss, the immediate past Deputy Senate President and Chairman now of the Senate Committee on Environment, Ikoha Ekweremadu. The Service Chiefs present here. I said I should adjust my mask. Well, I will. Nobody understands this COVID, so sometimes you wouldn't know whether it's also inside the microphone. So now, you know, if anything happens, I'll tell my wife to call on you. Well, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I like to adopt the protocols already established. First, I was invited to give like a goodwill message. And I decided to put something down in writing. So let me say that it is with great pleasure that I deliver my goodwill message at this town hall meeting organized by the Ministry of Information and Culture. I wish to seize this great opportunity to appreciate my dear colleague, indefatigable and hardworking Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, for this initiative. Suffice it to say that this, to a large extent, complements the efforts that we have been making at the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs to stem the tide of this menace of destruction and vandalization of oil and gas infrastructure. This is a very eventful gathering, which in my view is a recipe towards ensuring our country's socio-economic survival. Very timely indeed. And we are all stakeholders, and a rare opportunity for us to dialogue as we deliberate on these very core issues. It affects the overall interests of Nigeria. The Niger Delta region, like you know, is an oil and gas-rich area, having the third largest wetland in the world and harboring over 176 trillion standard cubic feet of gas and about 40 billion barrels of oil reserves. The expert, the GMD of NNPC, has spoken, and he has given you more data. The region has an estimated population of about 31 million people as of 2005. And that accounts for about 23% of Nigeria's total population. The population density in the Niger Delta region is among the highest in the world, with about 265 people per kilometer, per square kilometer. I'm referencing NDDC data of 2008. The region has witnessed alarming youth restiveness in the recent past as a result of agitations for government and multinational corporations drilling oil and exploring gas in the region to pay more attention to the development of the area. There were several militant groups and ethnic nationals whose activities and calls for protests negatively impacted the economy and equally impacted lives of the inhabitants of Niger Delta region and the nation at large. To address this situation, the federal government on September 10, 2008, created the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs to formulate and coordinate policies for the development and security of the entire region. Since the inception of the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, the ministry has had several engagements and reached out to virtually every community in the region, meeting with chiefs, community leaders, town unions, trade and artisan groups, market women, and other organized representatives of people from the region. It is, however, pertinent to point out that none of these initiatives have resulted in the desired total peace and progress in the region, and of course, stoppage of vandalism of oil and gas infrastructure. Rather, some of them have even led to more agitations and, of course, the militancy, loss of lives, and the economic deprivation of the region. On vandalism of critical oil and gas infrastructure, I must commend the GMD of NNPC for the initiatives. From what you saw of the data presented, you can see from over 1,000 plus. Now we are looking at 94. And I can assure you that if he continues at the pace he's doing, coordinating all of us and working with stakeholders, particularly the service chiefs and their efforts, the men in uniform who are here, we may be talking about 20 or 15 in the next few months. These vandals, disguised as agitators sometimes, wantonly destroy critical oil and gas infrastructures in the region thereby disrupting oil and gas production. The effects of this on the economy of the nation cannot be overemphasized. This has already been pointed out by the GMD. Primarily, the losses of the Niger Delta region in terms of development as a result of violence occasioned by pipeline vandalization has become the gains of other regions, such as the Lagos side, where from ExxonMobil headquarters, Morocco, as we used to call it in those days, the Lekki area, in fact, they have joined with Ekpe now in terms of development. All those buildings there would have been in Port Harcourt, Akwa Ibom, and also in Delta State. But they can't be moved now. They have already gone because of the activities of militancy and then vandals. In fact, wealthy Nigerians, even from those regions, sons and daughters, corporate organizations, international oil companies, who hitherto were operating in the region, have been forced to move away from the region to the other parts of the world and some other parts of Nigeria, with seemingly welcoming disposition at the expense of the Niger Delta region. The implication of this is that the Niger Delta region is itself wallowing in abject poverty. Of course, the effect of oil spillage, pollution of the environment, destruction of the ecosystem, farmlands and aquatic life, and other heightened socio-economic ills could be felt even as you near the area. Even the environment on its own, as you are breathing in air, you notice that the air is different because of pollution and gas flaring. For the babies in Kayama, the old women who farm in Otueke, the boys who fish in Ilaje, in Ondo State, and the young girl with the hope for a better tomorrow, we must come back to the drawing board to rethink our actions on pipeline vandalization. An Ijaw proverb says, "He who sees a rough river and tries to cross with a small boat should not blame God." Another one says that a man whose house is on fire, that's what in the Niger Delta, cannot go ahead to pursue rats when the house is on fire. This points to the fact that the dangers that pipeline vandalism posed to the Niger Delta region itself were far more on the region than even on the federal government and the oil companies, because they have alternatives. Some are moving to even other countries in the world now. They thought those were the targets, but they ended up doing themselves. Aside the socio-economic effect of pipeline vandalization, there is also the environmental effect, which only the Niger Delta region itself can explain, because they experience it. Permit me to use this other Ijaw proverb, which says, "The man who jumps from the ground onto an anthill, in all respect, is still on the ground. He has not jumped." And therefore, the essence is that any action we can take to protect perceived unfairness will bring a much more life-changing outcome and will also reduce the effects of what we are discussing here. Recently, the charge d'affaires of the Embassy of Ireland paid a courtesy visit to my office in the company of a Reverend Father. I just mention his name with his permission. I'm sure he's watching us. Kelvin O'Hara. He's at the moment in Bayelsa and serving as the chairman, board of trustees of Stakeholders Alliance for Corporate Accountability, SACA. The Reverend Father disclosed that from their studies, apart from the economic effects of oil pollution and of course, occasioned by pipeline vandalization and oil spillage, there is also another aspect of it, grave hazard, grave danger on the well-being of the inhabitants. He said from their own studies that about 16,000 young people between the ages of 1 to 15 die annually. 16,000 die every year as a direct result of this pollution occasioned by all these activities. If this is happening in the Niger Delta region, you can imagine the economic loss and the manpower loss to the nation in future. Future leaders are being exterminated as a result of what we are discussing. So this also shows the fact that this is a very, very important gathering, and the dialogue is very, very essential. I must say that calls for urgent attention for us to have zero tolerance for pipeline vandalization by vandals and oil spillages from the international oil companies must be met. The federal government recently launched a 1 billion cleanup for some parts of the region. I think mostly and prominent is the Ogoni cleanup. Luckily, my brother, the Honorable Minister of Environment, is here. He may enlighten us more on that. The estimated cleanup and total restoration time for the shrams, the creeks, fishing grounds, and mangroves is about 25 years in reality, if we must do a good job. The situation had remained a no-win situation for both the federal government, the oil companies, in fact, I would say for all, including the communities, no-win situation. The vandals have not won, the federal government did not win, and of course, the oil companies themselves did not also win. Because for the people of the Niger Delta region, their environment, in some instances, is permanently lost, and they may never, ever be able to recover the soil for their use. There have been several programs and initiatives aimed at addressing youth restiveness and bringing development to the region. I think one of them is the amnesty program, which has been very successful. And of course, the establishment of this Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs is another major attempt, including the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, that my chairman is looking at me. Right, Honorable Ojo, I'm happy to see you. So, we also had UNPADEC in the past and all sorts of attempts. And even the amnesty program I just mentioned is also a major one. At the recently concluded 4th National Council on Niger Delta, which we held in Port Harcourt, in fact also, I believe the next meeting on this will probably be in Warri or Port Harcourt. It was approved that the concerted efforts towards ensuring attitudinal change amongst the youth through intensive and consistent value reorientation advocacy programs must be adopted. We have started that in the ministry. We are meeting with stakeholders, traditional rulers, the youth groups and all, from one state to the other. We are setting up skill acquisition centers. We are training and empowering a lot of youths in the region at the moment. And consequently, the ministry is also at the process of developing a reorientation program targeted at school children between the ages of 10 and 18. Because we noticed that the amnesty program, which ought to have ended within 10 years, the chairman of the Senate Committee on NDDC is also here. My dear brother, I'm very happy to see you. We believe strongly that we must target these youth groups of between 10 and 18 years. Because some of them who are now craving to enter into amnesty program were maybe 7 years old when amnesty was introduced. And so amnesty is not supposed to be forever. And so we must try to let them know that they are not just destroying pipelines, federal infrastructure, as they may think, but they are actually destroying their own infrastructure and destroying their ecosystem and destroying their future. The reorientation program is primarily targeted at primary and secondary schools, let's say secondary school students and primary school pupils in each of the 9 states of the region. That is what my ministry is doing at the moment, with the aim of developing the right orientation within them and ultimately leading to the desired peace and progress that we are looking for in the region. The project is a broad-based approach that I believe will guarantee lasting peace and development of the Niger Delta region through an active orientation of the youth approach. In conclusion, I wish to say that the intended outcome of this meeting and this dialogue that we're having today with all the stakeholders, I believe will achieve the desired result. At the end of the day, there will be accelerated progress. There will also be development and sustainable development for that matter in the Niger Delta region, and there will be a rethink. Let me, while ending, just make reference to the data that the GMD pointed out to us. 60 billion naira yearly for repairs of vandalized pipelines. I was a bit rattled because if we budget and spend 60 billion a year to repair pipelines, it means that those who are vandalizing the pipelines are actually having an industry. It has turned into an industry which they hope to make 60 billion in a year. And I also want to proceed that sometimes we blame youths for destruction of pipelines, but they don't have the facilities, particularly offshore, to go right into the depths of the sea to go and break pipelines. So we must also focus on those who laid the pipelines, because sometimes they may also sponsor some of these things in order to have a bit of the 60 billion that has been done. So it's very worrisome. I think we must try to reduce the profitability of vandalization by also ensuring that we bring about sanctions. Let's parade them. When we are prosecuting vandals when they are caught, the Ministry of Information and Culture should also ensure that we give wide publicity to that, prosecution, so that it will also serve as a deterrent to others in the future. We must also give listening ears to the agitations, sometimes genuine agitations from some of the communities, because CSR, the corporate social responsibilities of the oil majors, oil companies and others have been thrown to the dogs. I would say that it is no longer the same. Now, you can see the reduction is as a result of complete cohesion between the security agencies and, then, of course, the ministries and also the office of the GMD, and for what we have been able to achieve now. I see a brighter future in terms of being able to stop the vandalization in totality, because we can move from 1,100 and something, and right now, by the year 2020, we have only 94. I believe that at the end of 2021, we may be talking about 15 or 20, because those people are gradually getting out of business. I'll end with a small story. I don't know how the social media is. I don't know whether sometimes some of the things I see there are true. I cannot vouch for it. But I watched when security agents were using sticks to beat up somebody in India who was evacuating dead bodies. Unfortunately, they were not paying him on a monthly basis or weekly basis. They were paying him per head of each person evacuated. So whenever he went to go and evacuate a COVID-19 dead body, he will also find another bed and turn off ventilator, so that as soon as he drops that one, they will call him again that there's another dead body waiting. And that way, the number he evacuated in the day will count. So he was caught while turning off one ventilator, and they were beating him with sticks, and he was promising not to do it again. But what about the rest that he had already killed? So as we move forward to think of how to stop the vandalism of our infrastructure in the oil and gas sector, let's also look at the attitude. And that is why I mentioned the beneficiaries of this vandalism. I hope it is not those who work in the oil companies, and then we now blame the Niger Deltans. or maybe it's a combined effort of both the Niger Deltans and those who laid the pipes. May God bless Nigeria. Thank you for this dialogue.
Wow, a whopping 60 billion annually lost to the repair of pipelines. As we've just heard from the Group Managing Director of NNPC, Melu Kulukyari, and the Minister of Niger Delta, Godswill Akpabio, destruction of oil and gas infrastructure and assets takes the form of sabotage, either motivated by political reasons or theft motivated by economic need. Petroleum pipeline vandalism could also be informed by accidental occurrence such as reckless agricultural or construction activities. However, they all agree that it is pertinent that not just the host community, but Nigeria at large must take ownership and protect this critical national infrastructure. They also gave an assurance that ongoing engagements to address various social concerns in the host communities, which the PIB will go a long way in taking care of, is already ongoing.
Whip of the Senate is here representing the Senate President. Sir, you're most welcome. We also have amongst us Your Excellencies Honorable Olubumi Tunji Ojo, Chairman, House Committee on NDDC, and member representing the Akoka Northeast and Northwest Federal Constituency. Honorable, you are most welcome. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we also have in our midst the Chairman Senate Committee on Niger Delta Affairs in the person of Senator Peter Wobashi. He's also here with us. Sir, you're most welcome. We equally have in our midst, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, the Chairman House Committee on Niger Delta, Honorable Ayi Essien Ekpeyong. You're most welcome, sir. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, parastatals, we have Otumba Shegun Rushiwe, the Director General, National Council for Arts and Culture, the Director General, NBC, Malam Barabe Shehu Ilela, Alaji Nura Sani Kangiwa, DG National Nitro, Honorable Ayobemi Olubumi Amao, Director General, CBAC, Professor Sunday Enesi Ododo, GM CEO, National Theatre, Lagos. We equally have Buki Ponle, Managing Director, News Agency of Nigeria. Francis N. Nwosu is the Executive Secretary, Nigerian Press Council. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we also have amongst us this morning His Royal Highness Alhaji Dr. Usman Nga Kupi, Sepai of Garki, Abuja. Sir, you are most welcome. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we proceed, we will continue to recognize those who have joined us or whom we are yet to recognize. So may I now revert to the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture to please invite the next panelist. Honorable Minister, Information and Culture.
Thank you very much for the introductions. And once again, I also want to thank the Senator Nwaboshi in particular. I didn't get to see him, to talk to him until last night, and he's here also. And the same with the Honorable Tuji Olubumi. I thank you very much for honoring us. I think it's now my turn to call on the Honorable Minister of Environment, the man who cleans all the mess, which results from the infrastructure, destruction, to please take the podium. Thank you very much.
a distinguished Senate President being ably represented here, the Right Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives being ably represented, distinguished chairman of the committees and distinguished senators, distinguished chairman of the House of Representatives and members, my colleagues and brothers, honorable ministers, representatives of the service chiefs, DGs, distinguished invited guests, good morning. We all know that Nigeria is dependent to about 70 to 80% on our oil and gas sector, which drives the economy, our economic development. However, that comes at a price on our environment, ourselves, animals, plants, water, air, land, are all impacted by the petroleum industry. So it's a balancing act. The activities of oil exploration and exploitation causes alteration to the environment. Some of the effects have been reduced or prevented basically by some steps taken in terms of prevention, adequate mitigation measures, and enforcement of relevant laws, regulations and guidelines such as the EIA Act Cap E12 LFN of 2004, which is domiciled in the Federal Ministry of Environment, which is also the institutional framework for regulations and management, and also that led to the creation of the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency in the ministry, which regulate the petroleum industry. Unfortunately, oil pipeline vandalism over the years is one of the major factors that has contributed significantly to environmental degradation in the Niger Delta region. Attack on oil facilities have become the innovation that replaced the agitation in the Niger Delta region against the passive, poor governance and neglect of the area. The impact of vandalism of oil facilities has not only caused the nation colossal losses of revenue, but money that would have been used and channeled to develop sectors of education, health, housing, roads, etc. Some incidences of report of oil vandalism. Data, according to the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, Spill Monitor from 2015 to March 2021, the total number of oil spill recorded was 4,919. The number of oil spills caused by corrosion was 308, equipment failure 484, operational maintenance error 106, sabotage 3,628, and yet to be determined 70, giving the total number of oil spill on the environment to 235,206 barrels of oil. This is very colossal to the environment. During the periodic interaction session between our ministry and oil and gas operators, companies decreased the continued loss of revenue attributable to the regular and incessant attacks, vandalism of oil facilities, particularly on major trunk lines such as the Trans-Niger pipeline operated by SPDC, the Nimbe Creek trunk line, and the Transfocados pipeline. Nigeria has lost approximately 4.75 trillion naira on oil theft activities in the 4 years between 2015 and 2018, according to the estimate by the Nigeria Natural Resources Charter. This equates to the federal government having lost approximately 43% of its revenue to oil theft. The sovereign statistics emphasize that Nigeria, as the most notorious country in the world for oil theft, lost roughly 400,000 barrels per day, dwarfing the second country, which is Mexico, that reported only 5,000 to 10,000 barrels per day. This is a difference of about 3,900%. Now the environmental effect, which is mostly the concern of the Federal Ministry of Environment. Economically also, of course, loss of revenue. But oil spillage, with its debilitating effect and negative consequences of fauna and flora of the affected environment, that is the plant and animals, affecting biodiversity. Freshwater pollution leading to smothering of aquatic life, destruction of spawning areas of the ecosystem, thereby reducing potential for aquatic animals' growth. Degradation of soil quality, which drastically reduces soil fertility, thereby affecting crop yield and affecting food security. Fire outbreaks and losses of human lives and property. Public health impact on oil spill affected communities. Loss of biodiversity, habitat and ecological damage. Air pollution and the attendant health impact. Acid rain, for example. Social impact, loss of livelihood, supremacy among militant casualties, etc. And one of the most effective, the most debilitating effect of hydrocarbon pollutant is their bioaccumulative nature. Once they get into the body, whether it's just a nanogram, it sits in there until another nanogram comes, it grows until it gets to microgram, milligram, and that is when it becomes serious, and the resulting is development of cancer in the body. Way forward. Increased awareness campaign in the dangers, negative consequences of pipeline vandalization and illegal activities. Adequate funding of relevant MDAs that regulate the oil industry and improve legal regulatory framework. There should be increased community development sustainable project for all host communities. Skill acquisition, provision of infrastructure and basic amenities, for example, by oil companies and relevant tiers of government. Creating ownership status to host communities and increasing their involvement in monitoring and surveillance of oil facilities. Provision of adequate tools and enhancing functions of joint task force and security operatives protecting oil facilities. Use of unmanned aerial vehicles and other sophisticated remote sensing equipment should be deployed in pipeline surveillance. Replacement of aging pipelines and periodic cathodic protection in pipelines across Nigeria against vandalism and external protection. There is also the need for the government's political will to use every available legislation to get the big players in the oil pipeline, whether locally or internationally, and prosecute them to serve as deterrent to others. Improve synergy between relevant MDAs and security operatives. Finally, I would like to say a little bit on the Ogoni cleanup. As also part of way forward is remediation, of course. We all know Ogoni cleanup has been in the pipeline for cleanup for years. Various governments that preceded this one have talked about it, but none of those governments have walked their talk. Today, President Muhammadu Buhari, His Excellency, has talked and is walking his talk, because today we are not only realizing, or it has become a reality cleaning the Niger Delta, but it's an actuality. Already, about 21 lots that were studied, assessed, and designed by the United Nations Environment Program have been cleaned up and certified clean. Others are in various stages of certification. Today, I can invite you to some sites where the land could not support agriculture. Today, you will go there and you will see crops, grass growing in those particular land areas. So the Ogoni cleanup is going and is working strong. Part of the Ogoni cleanup also is to provide livelihood. We have just inaugurated and handed over contract to water for water provision in the Niger Delta in all the 4 local governments of Kana, Gokana, Eleme, and Tai currently is ongoing. And additional water projects are coming. Number of women and youth have been trained and are being trained in various skills to be able to improve their livelihood, which is also part of that cleanup. So this government has done so much in the area of, in the Niger Delta. And by the way, the Ogoni cleanup is just part of a string of cleanup that is to go across the rest of the Niger Delta. And finally, to say the current cleanup, even in the international arena, is perhaps the biggest undertaking currently in the world of remediating a contaminated land by hydrocarbon, hence the name Hydrocarbon Pollution Remediation Project. Thank you for listening.
We thank His Excellency, the Honorable Minister of Environment, for the presentation. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, can we once again put our hands together for the Honorable Minister of Environment. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to also recognize once again the presence of the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum Resources, in the person of Bitrus Baka Nabasu, MNI, who has been here with us. We also welcome in our midst the host's Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Information and Culture, Dr. Mrs. Ifoma Adora Anya Utaku, who had been here with us. Ma, you most very welcome, and thank you for all the support to ensure that this program holds efficiently and perfectly. We have also Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the DG of NTDC in the person, person of Mr. Folorunsho Koka, who is also here with us. The DG of Nitro, Niotor, is also here with us. Mr. Nura Kangiwa, sir, you're most welcome. The Executive Secretary of NICO, Malam Ado Yahuza, is equally here with us. Sir, you're most welcome. The Director General National Gallery of Arts, Mr. Ebeferen William Ivera, is equally here with us. You're welcome. Also with us is the Director General, National Commission for Museums and Monuments, Professor Abba Isa Tijani. You are equally welcome. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I now, with your permission, request the Honorable Minister of Information to invite any of the distinguished personalities who is here and will want to give a goodwill message. The floor is yours, Honorable Minister, to invite any of the distinguished personalities. Thank you.
You can see that the vandalism is not restricted to just Niger Delta. It happens here too. Thank you very much. Please, before I invite the distinguished senator representing Senate President, my brother, to give his goodwill message on behalf of the Senate President. May I please recognize His Royal Highness Alhaji Dr. Usman Inga Kupi, who is the Sapei of Garki, Abuja. You most welcome, Your Royal Highness. I also please want to take the opportunity to please thank all very important guests who I had to shift or move when we had senators or members of House of Rep come in. I thank you very much for your cooperation, and I know that many of the senators also insisted on just sitting where they were, but I think protocol demands that we recognize them. I think that one person that I don't think the DG of the National Council on Arts and Culture, is he here? Yes, he's not been recognized because of what I call identity theft. He came in as a gentleman from the rivers, so nobody recognized him. He's not from Niger Delta at all. Saying, no, you're not from Niger Delta, don't worry, no matter how you dress. Thank you very much. You were recognized too. Please, it's my pleasure, please, to invite the representative of the Senate President to please present his goodwill address. Thank you very much, sir.
To stand on the already existing protocol. I would like to first apologize for coming in late. It's not in our character to be late for events such as this. The Senate President would have loved to be here in person. I believe perhaps that explained why I was also equally told just a little bit late. He planned to be here, but due to other commitments, he's unable to be here. And he asked me to please adjust my own program to be here to represent him. This is because the concept of the town hall meeting as it is very important in our engagement with our citizens and in explaining programs, policies, and projects of government. So please accept our profound apology. Be that as it may, let me say the Honorable Minister of Information, the Honorable Minister Niger Delta, our uncommon friend, who has been borrowed to the executive, and of course, as a parliamentarian, except if you want to remain permanently on the other side. Okay? We want you to remember that you are a duty to the people. Having said this, let me appreciate all the distinguished personalities who are here in this town hall meeting, and to also say that this town hall meeting is coming just after the National Assembly had passed the PIB. And of course, I know the story behind the PIB is one that if you want to talk about, I think you can do that without end. But for us in the Ninth Senate, we pledged and made a commitment in June 2019 when we were inaugurated, when we presented to Nigerians our legislative agenda. And in that legislative agenda, distinguished Senator Ahmed Ibrahim Lawal, PhD, CON, the Senate President, assured Nigerians that we were going to pass the PIB. And of course, many people will say, after all these long years in the National Assembly, we're not going to be able to do it. But we assured Nigerians that the Night Assembly is about working for Nigerians. And we believe any piece of legislation must not necessarily be perfect, because you can never have a legislation that is perfect. And that is why provisions are made in the Constitution and even in our own laws or standing orders telling us how we are going to amend any law that we so make. When we operate a law and there is need, we come back and look at the law and make the necessary amendments. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me say that this commitment under the leadership of our distinguished Senate President is one that all of us across all political divides in the National Assembly have committed to, and that is why this time around, with the thorough engagement, we were able to muster the courage to pass the Petroleum Industry Bill as it is. We know and we are aware of the sensitivity that some components of that bill has, in particular the issue of the host community. And I think we are here today to shed more light on an issue that borders on the sustainability and the livelihood of our host communities. I want to also say that beyond the legislation, we recognize the efforts by the various ministries, departments, and agencies, and many of them are here, the Ministry of the Niger Delta, and then the NNPC, in ensuring that they continue to work tirelessly in addressing issues around both the industry and the communities that are hosting various facilities around the industry. Let me also say that we recognize the difficulties, the environmental degradation, which the Honorable Minister of Environment has here made a very robust presentation on. And of course, others that perhaps we've not even begin to touch. But I believe the moment we are committed, as we have here today in this town hall meeting, to discuss these issues will continue to be in the front burner. And I'm aware that through this, various programs and projects can be reviewed and brought to the fore, so that when we are taking our appropriation, we can understand issues that we brought in. I also want to inform you that the Senate President is committed in supporting the chairmen of our various committees. We have the chairman of the Niger Delta, here, distinguished Senator Peter Nwabushi, and we also have the chairman of the Senate Committee on Information, distinguished Senator Sankara. And all other committees, it's our duty to give them all the necessary support. And I want to say in this town hall meeting that the Senate President is committed to doing that and has informed me to at least pass this message. We know to address any problem is not one engagement. So this town hall meeting is only a platform for us to bring issues to the fore. And fortunately, I think we must give kudos to the Minister of Information for the timing. I know any moment from now, the issue of the 2022 budget will also begin to come before the National Assembly. So this is the right time for us to look at issues, and we recognize that, yes, you've come for a town hall meeting. Stakeholders, we present issues, and we look forward to these issues being captured in the budget so that we can continue to give support to these communities, because it is when all of us are doing well that Nigeria will be said to be doing well. With these few remarks, on behalf of the Senate President, distinguished Senator Ahmed Ibrahim Lawal, it is my singular honor and privilege to declare this town hall open. Thank you very much.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we thank the representative of the Senate President for the goodwill message. And as she was talking, I just got a message asking that when is the PIB bill actually going to come? You had promised us since last week. So may you take that message back to the Senate President. It has been passed. When is it going to come officially to be assented? Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the DG Nostra, Musa Idris, from the Federal Ministry of Environment, is also here with us. Sir, you are most welcome. I have been calling my very good friend from the Video and Census Board, Adebayo. Sorry, sir. It's Adedayo Thomas. You're most welcome amongst us. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, permit me now to revert to the Honorable Minister of Information to invite the next distinguished personality to deliver the goodwill message. Honorable Minister of Information.
Thank you very much. Please, if we have members from either the red or the green chambers that want to make contribution or ask questions, we'll please give them the privilege of doing so first. After which, as we normally do, we go to the entire house, because this is no holds barred. It's being televised live, and we don't censor anything that is said here. Please, sir. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I am compelled to make this clarification. The MC made a statement that we've passed the bill. When is it going to be assented to? So all right, so I felt this is a town hall meeting, and the essence is to educate ourselves on what we are doing. Procedurally, last week we passed the bill. The House passed a different version from the Senate. So the next thing to be done is this week, we'll be setting up a conference committee. The conference committee will come together, look at the two versions, and adopt a common position. Immediately that is done, that will be sent to the Senate Legislative Drafting Department. They will put it in the normal legislative drafting framework, and after that, the clerk to the to the National Assembly will be conveying to Mr. President for assent. When that is done, we believe it has left the National Assembly, it's now in the hands of the executive. But let me assure Nigerians that very soon, we know we'll be going on our long vacation. And it is not possible for us to abandon this before we go on vacation. So we must finish it as soon as we can. I will not give you tomorrow, next tomorrow, but I know by 24th or thereabout, ideally we should be going on vacation. So before then, the conferencing and all the other acts will have been completed. So we are committed to this, and we believe it is something that must be done so that the industry will be beneficial to everybody. As somebody has said earlier, I think it was my brother here, he said everybody is a loser. We want everybody to be a winner in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Dr. Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, the Deputy Chief Whip and representative of the Senate President, for that clarification. I have more than 10 questions about that PIB bill. That's why I had to just summarize it. And I'm so happy that you've been able to answer it. And I believe our colleagues, our friends, our citizens that are not here but watching at home would have been able to appreciate what you have said. We thank you most sincerely. And we wish the Senate a very successful outing on this. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Minister has declared if there is anybody from the red or green chamber that is here and wants to make a goodwill message, the floor is now yours. And if there is none, we proceed. I'll give 2 minutes to see.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think my chairman, the chairman Senate Committee on Information will want to make either ask a question or seek for clarification or, give us a goodwill message. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, my colleagues. I think we are talking about the ventilation of oil pipe and gas here. I listened to Minister of Environment, GMP, also Minister of Niger Delta. So it's all about information, because without information, many things will not be understood. What I mean, as a chairman, Senate Commission, all I want is to enlighten the people, to inform the people, especially the people at that area. We have so many DGs here. We have DG of NOA, which is National Orientation Agency. We have DG of Radio Corporation. We have DGs to inform people. Unfortunately, let me give you one example about the, DG NOA, which is National Orientation Agency in Nigeria. National Orientation, we have about almost 774 local governments, areas. And all these areas or these local government, we have, agencies there. The only thing is when we go back to their budget, the budget is very, very slow, very small. So I don't know, I'm very glad as representative of Senate President is here. He assured everybody that, Senate will do all what we can do to assist so that to stop this vandalization. So information is power. Let us continue informing that area and also the whole Nigeria, because the loss is for that area, is for the whole nation. So, Honorable Minister, you have a big duty. You have a very, very big duty to roll in this aspect. With this short, my point, let me, bring everything down so that,
Thank you very much, my chairman. I'm glad because you are here. Senate President is here. You are all aware that the NOA is underfunded. So you are powerful advocates. Please, 2022, kindly help us to make NOA much more robust and be able to carry your message even better. Thank you very much. May I please call on my other chairman, the chairman of the House Committee on Culture, Prince. Here am I pleased to make his contribution. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, distinguished colleagues from National Assembly, Honorable Minister for Information, our host. If everybody stands on existing protocol, I'm sure that protocol will crash. So I like to run with already established protocols. And mine is basically to commend you.
You've been doing this town hall for a while, and you've been moving from one part of the country to another. I'm here today, and I'm impressed at what you're doing, and there's a better time to have picked a topic which you have picked today. And you have been able to bring together all stakeholders. I see captains of industries here. I see the GMD, Minister for Environment, Minister for Niger Delta. I see service chiefs whose duty is to help protect our lives and our properties. I also see key stakeholders from the National Assembly here, NDDC Committee, Information, myself from the culture, and leadership is also represented here. So in a forum like this, having brought up this very key topic at a time when after 20 years, the Petroleum Industry Bill has finally been passed by both chambers. And like the leader said from the Senate, it's at a point where both houses will come together in a conference to address gray areas, since there were two different documents. Host communities where this oil has been tapped over the years are being accused of involving in vandalization of these pipelines. And like the Minister of Niger Delta said, he said, we do not know if it is the use from the host communities, neither do we know if it's even the contractors that lay these pipes. But the most important thing is that these pipes are being vandalized, and they cost us over 60 billion, like it was said here today. Now, if these communities are properly carried along, if these communities are adequately catered for by law, not just corporate social responsibility, by law, I'm sure a lot of them will be adequately engaged enough, because they say the idle mind is the devil's workshop. So this issue which Nigerians are presently clamoring on, making sure that the host communities are well taken care of. I know that both documents have a disparity on 3%, 5%. There's no better time to come to a conference and harmonize and even see if the host communities can get more than 5%. However, I think that your topic has come at the right time. I think that you have the right persons here. And as Nigerians watch what you are doing, it is for all of us that have one role or the other to play, to go back and key in to make sure that everyone is carried along. Culturally, it is also important. Now the executive is here. It is important for the president and the federal government to understand the key issues, that a lot can be done through culture, which is a way of life. We're talking about agitations in the East today. We're talking about agitations in the West, even in the Northeast, insecurity. If we go back to the roots, which is way of life, I'm sure a lot were inculcated in us when we were growing as way of life. But not to focus in our culture and the way of life, it will obviously have an adverse effect in all that is happening today. So let me use this opportunity to appeal to yourself, your colleagues that sit in the executive committee, to ensure that government takes attention to the culture of our people, to help in security, to bring the much desired unity which we require in Nigeria today, and also to help in enlightening our people, as simple as the need not to vandalize our pipelines. Thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
We thank Honorable.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. I think Senator Nwaboshi also wants to make some contribution. Thank you very much.
Senator Nwaboshi. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. My colleagues in the National Assembly, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. This topic, protecting oil and gas infrastructure, is a very important topic. And I'm very happy to be here with the GMD. Because if I listened and I heard what the Honorable Minister for Niger Delta Affairs, because I was not here when he presented his paper, when he said 60 billion is being used, I hope I'm right, to protect the pipelines. And in the course of our debate, for this 3% or 4% for the host communities, I remembered that one of the things, or one of the issues that were discussed extensively was movement to 5%. And one of the things we were told was that if we move it to 5%, the oil industry, or the oil companies will run away from Nigeria. And here we are talking about 60 billion naira that is being lost annually. Now, the issue is this, and like some of us have always said, and I'm happy you're here, if we are losing 60 billion naira, or we are using it to repair the pipelines, what effect will it have on the 2%, which ought to have been a compromise? That is one of the discrepancies or the differences between the House of Representatives and the Senate. Because it's based on the information. And as one of the members of that whole committee for the PIB, some of us stood at the least that oil communities can have, host communities can have, is 5%. Now the House has moved it to, in their own committee, to 5%. But based on information offered to us, that the people will run away, that if we give them 3%. Mr. GMD, because these are information put before us, how do you reconcile it with the 60 billion that were being used every day to protect the pipelines? When the Honorable Minister for Niger Delta Affairs was speaking, thank God I am the chairman of the Senate Committee on Niger Delta Affairs, in which case it's not only NDDC. I also oversight the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs and Amnesty. The Honorable Minister did make some statement about amnesty. And we know that the amnesty was supposed to be for the first 30,000. But Honorable Minister, I am aware that up to today, even as at last week, that many militants come to your office to ask for one favor or the other and bring in papers that they want to be captured. If they are not captured, that most of these things we are debating here, which is to protect the pipeline and gas, that they will not give any guarantee. Now, if, and only if, we decide to stop the amnesty, which is, of course, there's a school of thought that is saying that it should be phased out. Well, there is a school of thought that said, allow it to continue so that we can be able to protect all these pipelines. I want you to marry it with the question I've asked the DMD. Because if you make the host communities and the individuals in that community to be responsible for the pipelines, which is what is contained in the bill. What is contained in the PIB bill is that any community where this pipeline, the money for that community will be used or will not be made available to them until that thing is corrected. So how do we marry all these things? Because if you give me opportunity
or responsibility to protect what is in my house or what is in my community, you can be assured that everybody will be involved and everybody will make sure that that property or anything you have left in his possession will be well protected. And that is why people are talking that it is the community, the youth in that community, the traditional rulers in that community, the people in that community, the owners of the land will be the best people with the security agents that can protect the pipelines. So if we are talking about this, we have to marry it with the duties we are doing here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. At the appropriate time, please, I just want to make a correction. The figure of 60 billion came from Minister of Information and Culture, not from the GMD and MPC. And at the appropriate time, I will defend that. But all the other marriages, I think he's going to account for. Thank you, sir. Right Honorable, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Senate President, ably represented by the Deputy Chief Whip of the Senate, distinguished senators here present, the honorable ministers, the GMD of NMPC, while I rest on all other existing protocols. This is a very important topic, extremely important and very pivotal to the economic sustainability of our dear country and nation, Nigeria. Nevertheless, my first observation is that I sincerely think that this same topic should, this same thing should happen at a lower rung of the ladder, because we can't just sit here and take these decisions. Security is very local, and that is the truth. So I want to advise the Ministry of Information. You've taken the first major step in terms of organizing this, and I think it will be good if it goes to most of these states, Niger Delta states and downwards. And that's why I will also like to say that the Orientation Agency has a lot of roles, lot to play. We remember MAMSA in those days, and we know everywhere it was about MAMSA. The issue of value system is a key issue in Nigeria. And when you talk about security, you talk about vandalization and all these things, they're all interwoven. And the National Orientation possibly an independent source of funding, which I think the Senate President is here present, that the National Assembly must look into to be able to create, so that they will have enough budget and money to be able to create the type of awareness that Nigeria needs at this particular point in time. Now to the issue of the PIB. Personally, I believe the least the communities deserve is 5%. I sincerely, every Niger Deltan believes in that, because when the responsibility of protecting pipelines, no matter how much you spend, no matter the energy or what you do, if the communities are not ready to cooperate with you, believe me, for every 1 naira you spend, you will end up losing 50 kobo. They will vandalize this pipeline. So we think the solution to this is to give comfort to the host communities. That's where this crude are gotten, and as well as the pipeline infrastructure. If these host communities are made to take ownership of these things, definitely the responsibility of securing this will be on them. And economically speaking, the Honorable Minister of Information spoke about 60 billion, which let's assume the 60 billion. I know you have your source of data. We lose hundreds of thousands of barrels of crude oil almost every day, at least more than 100,000 barrels of crude every day. Even if oil is selling at $50 per barrel, we can do the mathematics of that over a period of time. Then we look at the 60 billion that we have spoken about. Then I know between January 2019 and January this year, maybe about 15 billion naira or whatever, with regards to. So when you look at the whole economy, I'm just saying in Nigeria, have we not be penny wise, pound foolish? What is the equivalent of these 2% that we are moving up and down, arguing about? Look at the 100,000 barrels we lose. That is arguably 5% of our production capacity as a country. It's been lost. 60 billion naira extra is needed. And you have to see, we have tried this thing before. This is not rocket science. When amnesty program was not in place, we saw the level of vandalization. At a point, we were producing like 1.2 million barrels at a time before the amnesty program came on board. Now that we have the amnesty program, we saw that vandalization reduced in terms of attack in the region. There's peace. That tells you that the Niger Delta people, they are not hostile people. The Niger Delta people, they are not economic saboteurs. An average Niger Delta wants the progress of this country. But in wanting the progress of this country, they also want to be involved. They also want to be happy. They also want to have this sense of belonging. So for me, as a person, I think the issue of the 5% needs to be done. Then secondly, as distinguished Senator Peter Nwabushi said, on the issue of the amnesty program, either we like it or not, we relate with these people by virtue of our oversight. It's a time bomb, honestly. And I pray that the amnesty office is given a high level of coordination, and also funds are made available, because people are leaving the creek. The effort, you don't tell us, people are ready to drop violence. So many of them, in Ondo, for example, I know the number that came to me from Ondo, that the state government had already, they've surrendered weapons to the state government. But at the end of the day, they are not being captured now. Not because the amnesty office does not want to do it, but because the funds are not available. I think that these things, we need to look at it, because the sustainability of the amnesty program, I know it cannot be forever, but at least we can have timeline. Okay, maybe over 5 years, over this is the number we are facing out, with verifiable skills given to them, skills for them to be engaged constructively. If we're able to do this, then over a period of time, we can face it out. And lastly, I will want to also plead with the leadership of the National Assembly, they're here, and the executive, that the Ministry of Niger Delta honestly needs better appropriation. That is the truth. Because if people don't see infrastructure, if people do not have better lives, it is difficult for them, for you to tell them to leave their comfort zone for uncertainty. And also, lastly, the issue of the National Orientation Agency needs to be given much attention. And as I said, if we have a special fund for NITDA, called the Niger IT fund, and we have special provision for others, nothing stops us from having a separate, independent funding mechanism for the National Orientation Agency. We are talking about value system here. Every corporate organization should, as a matter of necessity, contribute by law to funding of National Orientation Agency. With that, we will not just sit in Abuja and be talking. We will not just be in Port Harcourt and we'll be talking. People will go to my village in Okeagbe and talk. NOA is arguably one of the few government agencies with presence in all the 774 local governments. So it means that with proper funding, honestly speaking, security issues is a product of ignorance most times. And with appropriate information distribution mechanisms, this can be cured before it becomes a menace, as we have seen in Nigeria. God bless Nigeria, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much. If nobody from any of the chambers, I'm told that the Shell representative, they want to make some comment. Is that correct? Yes. Please, can you please come and do so?
Yes, Bashir.
Bashir, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Distinguished members of National Assembly, honorable ministers of the Federal Republic, our royal fathers, let me also stand on well-established protocol. And on behalf of the country chairman of Shell and the MD of Shell Petroleum Development Company, I bring his goodwill and also thank the minister and the federal government for this laudable effort. The issues that have been the topic of discussion today have been well addressed by experts, beginning by the speech of the GMD on behalf of the minister, as well as the speech of the Minister of Nigerian Affairs, as well as the environment. There is no doubt the issue of vandalism of oil and gas infrastructure has been with us for a long time. It is becoming intractable, and the impact is also really unbearable. Clearly outlined the impact on economic losses, but also on environmental losses. As much as the loss in the economy is hurting today, I think as well defined by the GMD, the environmental impact is even more devastating. Whereas as a generation, we can easily contain the economic impact, the environmental one is an existential one. It's actually a one of next generation. And for us that operate in the international platform, we are actually coming under significant scrutiny and challenge by our shareholders to justify continuous operation in under this kind of circumstances. Because where we cannot contain our operation, keeping the oil and gas in the pipe, the impact on the environment is not something that one can live with. Certainly not as an operator, and certainly not as a major player in the international community. So no doubt, Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are well aligned, and we also thank the ministry for leading this effort in every effort that will be done to contain this menace. We have, as an industry, I think, see at our own level as an upstream operator, two ecosystems in how this happens. It is in the people who sabotage in the hope of creating jobs for repairs and also for environmental remediation. And I think that speaks to the 60 billion naira that has been well referenced into. And as the Minister of Delta Affairs mentioned, it is actually an industry. Now, what we haven't even mentioned about is also the theft aspect, which is feeding another big industry, whether it is in form of illegal refineries that are dotting the landscape, or indeed in ways through which these perpetrators are able to also export this pipeline as well. I believe the turnover of that second industry and business is far, far bigger than the one in the pipeline repairs and OSP remediation. So I think we cannot therefore underestimate the capacity or what we need as an effort to actually confront the perpetrators of this. It's a big industry, certainly. So whatever we do, whether in terms of the legislative opportunity that will come with PIB, or in the terms of work we do with the GSAs in containing this activity, or other efforts that we do under the leadership of NNPC in deploying technology, I think we need to do more. Certainly, whatever we are doing are mostly in the reactive domain. And I think the most proactive domain is actually what we have started today here, public engagement and advocacy. And one cannot say it less in the last honorable member that says, let this be the first laudable effort by the ministry, but certainly we need to do much more. I do agree that the vandalism cut across industry. You mentioned around the transportation, railway, you mentioned about the power lines and telecoms. But given the sheer impact and the existential threat that the environmental impact portends, I think this is much more important than all other sectors that we mentioned. So we cannot afford to just have one town hall station. We need to have many more. We need to engage at every level. Now, together with the new legislation and many other efforts that we need to think through as industry, we need to do more. So on behalf of my company and certainly of our industry operators, we thank you for this opportunity. And we pledge our support in whatever we can do as an industry to contain this. But I think it has to be in the room that this is an existential threat, not only on the environment, on our people, but also on the industry. Many companies such as our own are really under serious challenge as to continuous operation under these difficult circumstances. Once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The floor is still, open. Please, for contributions and comments before we call the panelists to come and respond to your concerns, your contributions, and your questions. Is there any other contribution from the floor? Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes.
Please, can you take the mic to him?
Okay, the mic is with me already. Good day, ladies and gentlemen.
Your name, the organization you represent, please.
Okay,
Thank
my
you.
name is Iweze Rose. I'm an environmental management consultant, and I represent environmental management and occupational health consultancy. I want to thank God for this opportunity, and I want to commend the Ministry of Information and Culture for organizing this town hall. That was very thoughtful of you, sir. Okay, my question and the comment as well goes to the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs. When you talk about reorientation program scale acquisition, you're targeting the primary schools and then the secondary schools. I want to suggest that you take it to the community, expand it, because most of the people that are involved in this vandalism, maybe they are not even educated. So I think that we should also expand it to the community, both secondary, both people in the schools and then people in the community that are not, doesn't go to school. And then also involve the faith-based organizations. They should be able to, have a way of, taking the messages across to the people as well. And the community leaders, please, very important. Then secondly, do we have a regulation, that is protecting or rather, that is regulating infrastructures, not just the oil and gas? Do we have that? If not, I think it's a time we start thinking about having a regulation or a bill to regulate the government infrastructures, not just the oil and gas. You remember the last town hall meeting when Honorable Amechi spoke about a Chinese that stole, that bought stolen, manholes and all that. Equipment from rails. And then he's also going to sell it to the government. It's unthinkable. This thing can't happen in China. And then they come over here, they have, a free way of doing that. Then the next question is to the Honorable Minister of Environment. Do we have the skills acquisition you mentioned, for the communities? You said is in the organic cleanup sector, and is going to be expanded to the other areas of the Niger Delta. Do we have like a monitoring and evaluation scheme, or rather a program to monitor those projects, as well as the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs? The skill acquisition that has been going on, do we have monitoring and evaluation program or to put those in check, as well as a data to understand the people that we can verify that have undergone through those skills? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just before any other contribution, please, the representative of the Secretary of Government of the Federation also has a message to pass. Please, can you please give him the microphone? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, distinguished members of the National Assembly and honorable ministers here present. Let me align on the existing protocol, please. I am representing the Secretary of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, who is unavoidably absent here today on this event. Last night when we were together in the office up to 10 p.m., he was still very willing to attend to this event because of the importance, the premium he attaches to this very topic of protecting oil and gas infrastructure. Then, unfortunately, before we closed from the office last night, he had an invitation to attend a very critical national issue, and he has asked me to send his goodwill message to the Honorable Minister of Information and all distinguished participants on this event today. The SGF as a matter of fact, remarked on the importance, the essential, critical the issue at stake because of what is going on now. And I'm happy with the presentations done by the three distinguished panelists on this event. They have raised very critical issues. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation as a custodian and the office responsible for monitoring government policies and projects is interested in this very town hall meeting, especially on this topic. So I would suggest that at the end of it, the outcome will be articulated and sent to the government for further necessary action. So I wish all participants a very successful deliberation. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please, our royal father, the Safi of Garki, also wants to make a contribution. Thank you very much.
The Senate President, ably presented by Senator Ali, the Speaker, Your Excellencies, the Ministers, all protocol being observed. I want to start by commenting the Minister of Information for organizing this town hall meeting. This issue is very important to all of us as the stakeholders. I want to also, before I comment, let me commend the National Assembly for also passing the PIV, Go Big with People. However, petroleum being the backbone of the Nigerian economy is very important to be protected. However, we know the Niger Delta people have also been patient. They also cooperated to see that the economy of this country grow. Like, there are some challenges of vandalization. You know, a hungry man is an angry person. Most of the challenges, we know the government is trying her best, but still we need more effort to be put so that the youth are given maximum place to participate. Why youth are not engaged positively, definitely we must experience these challenges. And having known that the white collar is now forthcoming and the petroleum account for 70 to 80% of our economy, our advice that the Ministry of Niger Delta, Ministry of Petroleum, and the petroleum industries that are mining, drilling the oil, they should see what they have to do after social corporate that they're assisting. They should be able to do something by establishing industries in almost all the local government areas so that the youth are gainfully engaged. By so doing, the challenge we are passing through of vandalization will be reduced to minimum level. And I also want to draw the attention of both the executives and legislatives to kindly see how they can put their head together to draw the attention of the bourgeoisies, whereby we try all they could to diversify the economy of this country in the area of agriculture and industries, while youth are also engaged positively for the production, having known that an idle man is a devil workshop. I'm sure if we're able to do so, these challenges of security challenges here and there, at least we will reduce to minimum level. And our security people will be a little bit relieved, because we know every now and then they have sleepless night on curtailing the security challenges. Finally, like a Hassan said, when they ever get version. What am I trying to say? I said it at that time, and I want to repeat. Please, Nigerian or all stakeholders, let us try all we could to inculcate the moral upbringing, our culture, our norms, and values to the younger ones. As we are running faster than our legs, allowing our moral and cultural aspect to be swept under the carpet, which is not the best for us. I want to sincerely thank you, the Minister of Information, once more, for your work well done. God will be with us. Thank you.
I think thank you, Your Highness. I think as soon as we take the Special Assistant to Mr. President, Senator Ita Eyang, I think would now please ask our panelists to address the issues and contribution raised. Thank you very much. Distinguished, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Minister of Information and our host, the President of the Senate, honorable members, honorable ministers, please let me stand on established protocols. I'm Senator Ita Enang. Let me thank the Ministry and National Orientation Agency for coming up with this. And I want to say that this is like a follow-up to what our office has been handling. Sometimes on the 16th and 17th of March, we held interaction with local and modular refinery and artisanal refinery operators in Nigeria. And they came out and have been engaging with them for almost 2 years. These are the persons who are alleged to be the persons breaking the pipelines and destroying the infrastructure. And at the end of the 2 days meeting, we produced this report, which we've submitted and we've syndicated to different authorities. We made several recommendations on the heels and depending on the recommendations that participants made. Who were the participants? These are persons who are operators of the modular and artisanal refineries in the Niger Delta. And they're not just in the Niger Delta, they are in other places in the country where you have pipelines passing through. They have a means of taking oil or crude and refining and selling at those points. These persons came out and said, look, we've done this business long enough, and we are giving Nigeria amnesty. And we are prepared to come in and have a kind of integration so that we are no more engaged in this. And they at that conference said, look, they do not want Nigeria to get to a situation of coming up again for cleaning a repolluted environment. We engage with the Ministry of Environment, we engage with the NNPC, we engage with the Ministry of Niger Delta, Ministry of Petroleum, and all stakeholders. We produce this report. I want to say that the best way we are coming to come out of this problem of destroying the infrastructure, destroying the pipelines, destroying the gas pipelines, is to positively engage these persons in different ways. We had made suggestions and they had made suggestions. One, creation of oil and gas park. Secondly, integrating them. These people are not ordinary criminals. I want to say that they are not very low-placed persons. There are intellectually engaged persons that are graduates of petroleum resources universities, most of them who prepare and who produce the instrument they use in boiling and refined petrol and diesel are trained by Petroleum Technology Institute, Refurum. They are trained by it. They produce it, and these are government institutions training these people. Therefore, the best we can do is to please come to the recommendations that were made by them. We had a conference in Sheraton for 2 days with them. All the government institutions were involved. So please, let's go back to them. Now, they will not destroy the pipelines if nobody was buying their refined petroleum products. They will not refine if nobody were patronizing them. They would not destroy or poke into the pipelines if there were no vessels that, when they break the pipelines, they pull in the pipe and they fill the vessels, and the vessels take the crude away out of the country and pay them in dollars. They will not be breaking. If there are no patrons, there will be no criminals. Therefore, the best solution in this matter is engaging with these people further and finding an accommodation for them in a legal process that says, look, we give you this, pay like this, and you refine their processes. All of them were educated by us. They are not ordinary street people. Again, sir, there is some level of discontent in some communities that leads to vandalization. There are some communities that host oil pipelines, gas pipelines that supplies power here and there. But those very communities don't have light in their community. Yet it is gas from their community that goes to power the electric stations and that power the other part of the country, yet they don't have power in their localities. And so out of anger, some of these things have engaged also with them. Again, this is not a security problem only. We have to take it as an economic problem. Now, I know, and we can guess how much we are spending on our military and the security forces to protect the pipelines and engage them. Now, I want to say that if we engage these people positively and make them part of the process, we would not have needed to engage so many of our security forces. Finally, on the oil pipelines protection, part of what they have said is that don't give oil pipeline protection contract to outsiders to come and protect oil pipelines in their own communities and therefore engage them as local hands. Give it to them and pay them in naira. Don't give it to these externals to pay them in dollars, and then they still come to pay them as subcontractors. Finally, sir, let us work on the oil alternative economic programs that will engage the people of the Niger Delta in economic activities other than oil. There's a program we're working on now, like we call it the fishing program, which we are engaging the people and institutions outside Nigeria and within Nigeria, which are building ship and trawlers, bringing them as completely knocked down, establishing them in the Niger Delta shores, and engaging the citizens to launch onto the deep Gulf of Guinea, fish for prawns and other seafood, and then bring it to the shore. In the course of it, when they are engaged in catching fish, there will be less of piracy catching people, because that will earn a living for them. Bayelsa has taken a good leap, and on Wednesday last week, we signed a memorandum of understanding with Bayelsa state government on this aspect, which will engage the citizens, almost 4,000 hands, when this comes on stream in the next few months. So this is going to be the best way of preventing the destruction of oil and gas infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to please call on the panelists, starting with the group MD of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, to please take the issues that are addressed to him, after which he will come to the Honorable Minister of Environment and then the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs. Thank you very much, Mr. Mele. I think we can go to the podium, so I think it's easier that way. Thanks.
Are you okay there?
Thank you. I think I would like to quickly address the issues raised by the distinguished Senator and Honorable Chairman on the host community. And I recall Tuesday last week, or Wednesday last week, I addressed both the House of Representatives, and on Thursday we gave our informed advice to the distinguished Senate, and I saw you, distinguished Senator, you are there. Our views are very clear. In our area of operations, there are several interventions that the federal government, the state government, and other subnational institutions have done to address the question of the host communities. And let me just be brutally frank. My brother, distinguished Senator Kwabi Excellency, is here, NDDC, supervisor in NDDC. We have the issues, and I've mentioned this on the floor of the Senate. We have made provisions around the 13% derivation. We have made provisions around the NCDMB so that it can facilitate growth. There are several other interventions that both the state, the federal government, the state government, and other subnationals have done to address the question of the oil-producing areas or communities. And we all agreed today, without any fear of any contradiction, that they haven't necessarily worked. That's the truth. And from an operational perspective, when you go around the Niger Delta today and look at the condition of the people in the Niger Delta, particularly the rural communities, and in very many areas where we conduct direct operations, we know for sure that some communities, distinguished Senator Kwabi is here, they have perpetual daytime, because the flare sites are sometimes a kilometer away from these communities. It's practically fire burning all through the day, all through the year, all around the year. And you cannot distinguish between daytime and night. This is one form of a much bigger challenge of environment than anyone can imagine. It's worse than flare because you can't sleep, you don't have night. And of course, the other issues around the spill sites that are across the Niger Delta in very many locations. Some have gone up. Some of them are integrity issues on our pipeline. Some are actually acts of vandals. And the cumulative effect is that you do not have meaningful development in these host communities. And I also told the Senate and the House of Reps that it's a failure of the elites, which includes me. So I'm not excluding myself. There's a total failure for all of us to do the right thing that brought us to the conversation around 2.5% and 5%. It would have been an unnecessary conversation. But that's where we are. So in 2008, and I happen to have the privilege of being part of the PIB story since 2008, it was the executive that proposed that everything we have done is not revolving around the communities. The communities have no responsibility for the things that they do, that we do for them, and how do we bring them into this picture. The thought came from the executive. Let me confirm this. And it was decided that what we need to do is to create a special structure where the host communities can take care of themselves. by creating the right structures, the right facilities that they want, the right development that they can get around their communities to be done by them so that they are fully in charge, and we create a host community fund, which they will manage with some supervision, yes, but they will be entirely responsible for management of those funds. And we have seen this practically. Bashir Bello from Shell is here. In very many, I mentioned this to the distinguished Senate in full session, that in very many communities, when you see properly working rural facilities, either in terms of hospitals or schools, that you will discover that many of them, or majority of them, with some exceptions, due respect to distinguished Senator Akwabe is here, and he has done great work in Akwa Ibom State. But in very many places, you will discover that many of the functional community-based projects, not the wide-scale project that you're talking about, not railways and major trunk roads. That's not what I'm talking about. Most of the functional community projects are the ones done under the CSR activities of oil and gas companies. And why they worked is that many of these projects are conceived and delivered in partnership with the communities. And that's why we say let's transfer that strategy into the host community fund process and create a host community fund that we can finance so that this will work for the community. So that's where it came from, honorable members and distinguished senators. And when it comes, you need resources to get this done. So you need to create the wealth for it to deliver on this. And it was a very, very considered proposal from the executive that we should make it 2.5% of the total operating cost of all our oil and gas operations. In 1 year, we currently spend about $16.7 billion as operating expense. When you take 2.5% of that, it comes to about 480, I'm not sure, 480 million, in that region, $480 million. Which for all intent, distinguished Senator Afagwe is here, is bigger than the budget of NDDC. And for all companies, whatever you do before tax is cost. Whatever you do before taxation is cost, and the cost will affect taxation. Cost will also affect the margin that comes to these companies. And they have choice. That's what Bashir was saying. He was very, very humble about the comments that he made. But what he said is that oil companies are leaving our country. This is really the message he passed through in a very subtle manner. And why are they leaving our country? It's not just about security. It's about the fiscal environment of the businesses that we operate in this country. Every cost you do is an additional load on the business, and it affects the margin of the company. And that's why they are largely leaving, apart from the environmental issues that he has raised. Yes, there are concerns. There are a lot of activist investors all over the world that make issue. But the primary thing is the issue of cost and the benefit that it comes to them, then followed by the environment. No matter the optics around the environment conversation, Honorable Minister, with due respect, that the key driver of decision of oil and gas investing community is about what value comes to them. And that's why we propose that leave it at 2.5% is bigger than the budget of NDDC. It will not have significant impact that will affect decision-making of businesses, so that because the businesses must need to be there before you can have any percentage. And therefore, leaving it at that makes business sense and is sufficient to deliver value to these communities. The Senate, in its wisdom, pushed it to 3%, and then the House, just like Chairman has said, that they maintain at 5%. But I can tell you, we can put any number. But what the number will do for you is what I've told you. That it will affect the decision of businesses, and that at the end of the day, 5% of zero is nothing. So you can actually put 10%. But it can be 10% of zero, ultimately. Because those businesses, just Bashir has confirmed, he's speaking on behalf of the entire upstream international businesses. And I know where they stand. Today, they make 80% of all the production of this country, all the majors put together. Despite all the local producers that you have, 80% of your production comes from the multinational companies. We are at the verge of losing them. That's the truth. because they have choice. It's very easy. We can say can go anywhere, somebody will come. Nobody will come. Because no one has the capacity to raise the financing that the oil and gas industry requires without the structure of financing and technical capabilities of the international oil and gas. There's no amount of pretense will solve this. But that's the reality. And therefore, I still maintain that my advice to the House of Representatives and the Senate, despite all the necessities, that this provision that the executive proposed makes business sense, it is doable, it will not impact the overall economics of this business, and that you will have 2% of something that will work. We can also put 5% of something that can be zero ultimately. Now, coming back to the argument around, if we can spend money on security, 60 billion naira, I don't have the exact numbers, I'm not sure that's the exact number, but we spend a huge amount of money on security. Ordinarily, it should be zero. So it's a cost that should not exist in the first instance, because oil companies are not designed to conduct security operations. It is not the business of oil companies to provide security. Everything we are doing today is by circumstance. And that's why our new direction, and that's why I'm very happy that the distinguished representatives of the Chief of Defense Staff and the Chief of Army Staff, Naval Staff, and the Chief of Air Staff are here. The whole model is that the security outfit must take the responsibility of security. Oil companies are not caught into doing security business. We ended up recruiting security contractors of all natures, and that's why I can see a distinguished Senator Etao now says, let them do the security. No, it's not their business. The community's work is not security business. It's not their job. It's an aberration. It's the wrong thing to do. You are placing responsibility on an institution that has no ability or no capability to do this. They can support you. They can give you information. Yes, that's correct. But not to put them the burden of security. And that's why you bring in some characters who will come and now recruit people around and put them on the pipeline, and they'll discover that you're paying them 30,000 naira, and then the next day the bundle comes and say, look, what's your business? I'll give you $10,000. So it's as good as starting it. You can start, after 6 months, it will come back to the same point. That's why our strategy is to go back to the fundamentals, which is that government security agencies must take responsibility. It's their job. We can support them. The communities can support them, but not to abdicate that responsibility to community in the language of patronage. And I will come to what Anna said around the artisanal refineries. It's very true. We participated in all the engagements. We had our informed views. That refining is not cooking crude oil. What is happening today is cooking. And what these gentlemen want is that to have access to crude oil, and there's no way you will do what they are doing, no matter how formal you make it, that there's no way you will process crude oil at that rudimentary level and recover your cost. So it's not possible. Therefore, you cannot buy it at the market price of crude. And I know I had him, he's in fact probably some form of discount on the crude, That's a business decision. So if you do this just to curtail stealing, then of course I will also humbly say that our gentlemen in the uniforms have not done their work. So they should be able to do their work. And therefore we take care of the communities in the way and manner that will benefit them, not to create additional burden and a responsibility that they shouldn't carry on them. And that when you want to refine crude, we have agreed with Senator Enang that will create the structure that create the proper refinery, not the cooking pots. And the cooking pots will eventually, you cannot dispose the end product, you cannot dispose all of the end product, and all the waste that will come with it, and they will continue to become a problem for the environment and for the communities, much more than resolving their issues. So I think I've spoken about all of them, and thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, GMD. It's my honor now to please call on the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs to please take on the comments, questions, and remarks as affects the Niger Delta Ministry. Thank you, sir.
Once again, I'll remove my mask. Well, let me once again rest on the existing protocol. I am a lawyer, and in law we say res ipsa loquitur. The act speaks for itself. The experts have spoken, so I can only say I concur. For the lady that asked about the skill acquisition training, the Ministry of Niger Delta first has built many skill acquisition centers across the 9 states of the Niger Delta. I think they started it in 2010. We have completed many of them, and they are mostly in the oil-bearing communities. But unfortunately, what they built, for me, the concept was that of a technical school, because you have 38 structures, football field, space accommodation for 1,000, 500 for women, 500 for ladies. You have houses for lecturers and all that. So if you just skill acquisition that lasts maybe between 1 week to 3 weeks, it means the rest of the 6 months the place will be abandoned and could be used by kidnappers. So what we have done is that strategically we have handed over most of those places to universities like the one we finished in Bayelsa, and we handed over to Niger Delta University. The one in Ondo, we have just handed over to the Federal Polytechnic there in Ondo. But the one in Akwa Ibom that was built in Ibno, we are yet to take a decision on that. We are hoping the IOCs can make use of that collectively to do most of their trainings instead of going abroad. So the interactive sessions are not limited to school children. We have been doing it with traditional fathers. We've done it with ex-agitators. We've done it with the youths. In fact, by 16th or thereabout, we have a major youth session that we are going to do in Port Harcourt at the Presidential Hotel for the 9 states of the Niger Delta. The thousands of youths are going to be there. We are talking about not just vandalization, but ways of life and reorientation, and then the way forward for peace in the region. I can say that, yes, why we are mentioning the children now is that we believe in what the Holy Book says, and says, teach the children the ways of life, and then when they grow up, they will not depart from those ways. So we want to see how we can catch them young before they even get to the age that they know what pipeline is. Let us begin in the primary schools, in secondary schools, to give them the proper orientation that breaking pipeline or vandalizing it will cause more harm to them, to their environment, and then, of course, to their future than even to the government or the IOCs that they want to punish. Then I want to adopt in totality what the GMD said. I'm wearing 2 caps. One, I'm a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and on the other hand, I'm also from Niger Delta. My experience, if I have to be very frank, is not the amount of percentage that we have. It's the management of the funds that matter most. We have had, and then there are 2 issues actually. Outside the management of the funds, it's also the sincerity of the IOCs to release the funds when they are necessary and when they are due. I'm saying this because of the experience I've seen in NDDC. If we look collectively at the last 15 to 19 years since NDDC came on board, the IOCs collectively are owing the NDDC, the 3% remittance, about $4.2 billion. That is what is due. And it's not only the IOCs alone, because most of the contracts are JVCs, joint venture. So the GMD is also part of this indebtedness, because I think either NAPIMS or so must collaborate with the IOCs before some of those releases are made. And we employ the very distinguished senators and members of the National Assembly to look into this, because I noticed that in the law, there was no sanction for non-payment of the 3%. And so it now means that every year you have to go cap in hand, begging the oil companies to bring their percentage. And the result is lackadaisical attitude. And so the region has not been able to get the required funds. But what happened is that I believe that the IOCs and the other oil companies must have been discouraged as a result of the way the funds were even used. The funds that they made available were used by the NDDC. You notice you cannot actually point at substantial development in any of the 9 states, in spite of the amount of money that has so far gone into the NDDC. So I thank the President for deciding to find out how much had gone into the NDDC and how much of it had been judiciously spent and how much of it had been looted. The reality is that the corruption is a major problem for Nigeria. Even when the first Prime Minister was taking over from the British government, the British wrote as part of their report that the greatest problem facing Nigeria in 1960, this was 1960, was corruption. So, and if that has continued to today, you can see that with corruption, no matter the percentage we put for the oil-bearing communities, we may end up with communal clashes. So I think that we should get started. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step. You can have 10% of nothing, because if there is no production, the percentage you have in the law does not matter. This is just my personal advice. So I don't want anybody to say, oh, Senator Kwabio does not want 5% or 15%. I want us to get started. So when you go back, even if you arrive at 4%, let's get started. That was never there before. And let's see how the host communities make use of what you have already included now. And then from there, you could be encouraged to say, okay, they have managed it properly. Let's amend the law. The law is amenable. We can always amend the law whenever the need arises. And of course, if they use the money very well, there's nothing wrong in you saying, look, it's even better, even the 13%, we can slash part of it and add to the host communities because they are doing a better job. That's my personal opinion. So I want to plead with you that before you close this July, please agree. And then the GMD kept talking about 2.5. None of the two houses talked about 2.5. I think that you are still in the past. Because one house is talking about 3%, the other house is talking about 5%, but you are speaking 2.5. I think that has passed you. You are not a member of the National Assembly, so get used to the fact that they have left your 2.5 behind. I want to also share your opinion, sir, that in the issue of these illegal refineries, when I was a governor, I used to work with security agencies, particularly the Navy, to destroy most of those places. In fact, we used to burn down some of them because if you see what they do to the land, cooking crude oil, I don't know how they get the crude oil, but cooking crude oil, at the end, they don't know how to dispose of the byproduct of what they cooked. They may take what they call refined crude, which is PMS. But at the end, what they leave behind is terrible. It destroys the aquatic life, it destroys the ecosystem, it destroys the land. If you see some of them, I will be very glad to show Senator Itayana some of the pictures that I have. Privileged information, because these are things we shouldn't discuss in public. This is security. So by the time you look at the areas where these things are being carried out, I believe that a meeting that he called and the people came out, we should have profiled them because actually they are engaging in criminality. I don't want to call them criminals since they attended your meeting. And so because of that, I believe that there are people that we should actually profile to know, because it's a very destructive thing to any environment. As I will send some of the pictures to the GMD so that you see what I'm talking about. I saw these things when I was a governor and I was appalled. The advantages, the disadvantage far outweigh the advantages of people saying we are refining, we finished from Efurum, we don't have a job and all that. As I speak now, we have finished 3 modular refineries in the Niger Delta. At GMD, I'm sure you're aware of that. And then that is encouraging people to come out and go through due process. Any country that is not ruled by law is bound to go into chaos, because we have a process of getting licensed, we have a process of setting up refineries and all that, not just buying cooking pots and then drums, and then you go get crude from anywhere, and then at the end of the day you take what you want and dump the rest on the ground, and the ground cannot be used for the next 25 years. So I align myself with your suggestion that they should come out properly, and then we put them into cooperatives, and then we give them the right license, and maybe even make some assistance financially available, or get some of the banks to give them loan at very low interest rate, or get CBN to bring out something that can assist them to come together as cooperatives and own a small modular refinery instead of continuing to cook crude oil and then looking for crude oil. So I think this is a little bit I can say, but just to also support the fact that we must cascade these discussions. It's impossible to shave somebody's head behind. So it will be better for us to get to Niger Delta and host the next summit, and then rather get us in Abuja with our competitors to join virtually, instead of the farmers and the host communities joining virtually as they are joining in this one. I thank you for listening.
I thank you very much. It's now my privilege and honor to invite the Honorable Minister of Environment to please clean everything up. I can assure you that we are running up before 2 o'clock, because I know that the GMD has to be before the National Assembly. I know that the representative of the Senate President and all the senators and House of Rep members are itching to go back to the National Assembly. So we'll round up very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The question was about monitoring and evaluation of the high prep project. Indeed, we have a unit specifically to look at the project, how it's being operated, in short, monitoring and evaluation, not just the remediation of the soil itself, but the water, the fauna and flora, the people themselves. There is that particular unit which comes back from time to time to sit with the management and report its findings. In addition to that, also there is what we call a CRAC team. This is the Community Representative Advisory Committee. Every single member of that CRAC team is from the community that is involved in the cleanup, and they are supposed to also watch out, hear from the community, see from the community, and come and meet with the management to tell them what is going on, what needs to be changed, what is good, what is not. So that is all part of that. Also, we have the communication unit. These are all part of the structure of high prep, to be able to communicate to the people, to know that the project is going on and is going on strong. Finally, I'll just make a quick comment on the environmental impact. The thing is, economy can go into recession today, some parameters can change tomorrow, and we'll get out of recession. Not environment. You pollute, it can go beyond 25 years, as the Honorable Minister has mentioned. 40, 50 years, 60 years, certain chemicals will continue to persist where you have polluted the environment. And in the end, if you are the one causing the pollution, I don't know how much longer you will live to even enjoy the economic benefit, because you may go into recession much sooner than the pollutant will go away from where you are. So it doesn't work. And I don't think I will support anything that will continue to pollute the environment. Thank you.
We want to thank all your excellencies, the senators, and members of the public who have made contributions and interventions during this session. The panelists, you have all been very wonderful. Your excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are almost coming to the end. So at this stage, may I now invite the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, who is the host and moderator, to please come forward and give his closing remarks. Honorable Minister.
I would adopt the phrase of my chairman, House Committee on Culture. I will not stand on existing, I will run on it. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you most sincerely for your contributions, especially our panelists. I think their presentations were quite powerful and informative. I consider this one of the best town hall meetings we've ever organized. This is not just because of the important topic, but also because of the massive attendance of members of the National Assembly. This is the 20th edition of our town hall meeting, and this is the best attended by members of the National Assembly. And I want to dwell a bit on this. I reminded most of them only about between 9 and 10 p.m. yesterday, and they all responded positively. I'm very grateful. As you know, the National Assembly makes laws for good governance, among other things. Their presence here means stronger legislation to address the important issues of destruction of public infrastructure. There's more good news today. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, through the GMD and MPC, has told us that from 2015 to date, we now have a more clement Niger Delta region. This is very good news. He illustrated this by saying there are less incidents of vandalism, and he said from 623 cases in 2014, the number has dropped to only 94 so far in 2021. Congratulations. This is very impressive, and once again, I congratulate all the stakeholders for this. But we cannot celebrate until we bring cases of vandalism down to zero. This is because, as the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs said, 16,000 young people die yearly due to the effect of the pollution and other associated environmental issues. I'm also delighted that, as the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs said, the ministry is training and empowering our youth in the Niger Delta, that there is a real orientation of pupils and students in the region. These are laudable programs that will definitely have a good impact on the protection of oil and gas infrastructure. The Honorable Minister of Environment revealed that sabotage was the cause of most of the 4,919 cases of oil spills between 2015 and March 2021. He said we lost 4.75 trillion to oil theft between 2015 and 2018. This has gone a long way to highlight the importance of the series of town hall meetings we are holding to call attention to the need to protect public infrastructure. Perhaps the best news today is that the cleanup of the Niger Delta region has started in earnest. The Honorable Minister of Environment has revealed that 21 lots have been cleaned up in the Niger Delta, and that the cleanup will be spread to other parts of the Niger Delta region. Congratulations to the people of Niger Delta in particular and all Nigerians in general for the ongoing cleanup. I must also thank our bosses from the National Assembly for their questions and comments. In particular, I thank the Senate President for his education and clarification on the recently passed PIB bill. And I think his clarification has actually underscored more than we can ever imagine the importance of this town hall meeting. Because at this town hall meeting, many of us are even further educated on the processes of passing a law in the National Assembly, and has actually very clearly told us the position of the PIB. And since this is televised live and is being streamed, we have been joined also virtually by hundreds of thousands of people, I think this shows that town hall meetings are truly platforms to take information to Nigerians. I must also thank, and I thank Honorable Olubunmi Ojo on his fantastic contribution on better funding for the NOA and the Niger Delta Affairs Ministry. When we organized this town hall meeting, we were more concerned about the impact of destruction of oil and gas infrastructure. Little did I know that I will be the biggest beneficiary of this town hall meeting. Thank you very much. The representatives of Shell spoke eloquently on what he called a bigger threat of a theft and illegal refineries. That is not just about money or even jobs, it's more about the cost to our environment. I thank everybody. I know that a lot of suggestions have been made here as to whether we ought not to hold this town hall meeting in the Niger Delta, or whether we should not hold it, closer to the people. Yes, we note this, but I must tell you that there are also some considerations for us to come here. But I'm going to leverage on what the Shell, I think it's Engineer Bashir, you promised that you are going to assist the ministry. I would not forget that. If that is the only thing I'll take away from your presentation, I've, in a very clandestine manner, I've secured your telephone number and you'll hear from me. I thank you very much, everybody. Thanks.
We thank the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture for the closing remarks. We thank every one of you who has been here with us. But before we close, may I specially recognize the presence of Ambassador Peggy Emmanuel Uwebari, the Chairman, Ogoni Youth Assembly, Abuja branch. You are most welcome. We're happy you are here with us and you convey our message to your people.
I'm sorry, MC, please, I forgot also to specially thank members of the armed forces. I think without your speaking, everybody spoke for you. And that the clement Niger Delta we have today is a combination of both, progressive policies from government as well as your efforts. Because I know that for you, it's not just about kinetic. Non-kinetic also is playing a good role, a very good role. I know the number of clinics, the number of schools, and the way the military today, the armed forces and security interact with the Niger Delta. We thank you very much. We can never thank you enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, Dr. Mrs. Ifoma Adora Anya Utaku, will thank everybody who is seated here on behalf of the ministry. So may I now invite her to please come forward and thank every one of us. Please don't forget to thank me.
For want of time, I beg to stand on the already established protocols. Let me, on behalf of the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, thank everyone here present for honoring our invitation to this memorable occasion of this town hall meeting being held to address vandalization of critical oil and gas infrastructure across the country. As we seek to stem the tide of such wanton destruction of public infrastructure and assets, let us all lend our support to this current campaign on protection of oil and gas infrastructure. I thank the Almighty God for making today's event not only possible, but you will all agree with me that it has been a resounding success. Let me thank specially our chief host and convener of this event, our very own indefatigable Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. We thank you for all that you have been doing in addressing the challenges facing our dear nation. I express our profound and most sincere gratitude to you all for making out time out of your very busy schedules to be part of this town hall meeting. I am of the belief that the time spent here has been worthwhile, and I am assured that we have all gained a great deal of knowledge on the topical issues of today's discourse. And having availed ourselves of the expertise and the oratory prowess of our very erudite and distinguished speakers of today, let me extend our gratitude to each and every one of them individually. The Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, ably represented by the GMD of NNPC. The Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Dr. Godswill Akpabio. The Honorable Minister of Environment, Muhammad Mahmoud Abubakar. You have truly enlightened us on issues relating to the destruction of oil and gas infrastructure across the nation. Your presentations have been very thought-provoking, and we have indeed been educated and we have been informed. I must mention a deep sense of appreciation to all stakeholders in the oil and gas industry here present, all you, our dear participants, distinguished senators, particularly the Chairman, Senate Committee on Information, distinguished members of the House of Representatives, particularly our own Chairman of the House Committee on Culture, and other members, other chairmen of the Senate committees and House committees, the various here present, all honorable ministers here present, our service chiefs and their representatives here present, the directors generals and the chief executives of the various agencies and parastatals of government here present, all the representatives of various organizations here present, our royal father, our religious leaders here present, and of course, the fourth estate of the realm, the gentlemen of the press. We thank you most very greatly for having honored today, for your presence at this event. And not forgetting the organizing committee for this event, who have done a marvelous job. And also not forgetting the master of ceremony today. We thank him for a job well done. Let me particularly thank the management and staff of the National Orientation Agency for their contributions to the success of this event. And let me thank, of course, our media organizations, the NTA, the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, the News Agency of Nigeria, Voice of Nigeria, and other media outfits for the live coverage of the event. As I look forward to your attendance of the next of the three-part series of town hall meetings, may God lead you all safely back to your various destinations as you depart from here. Let me also thank the representative of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, my fellow permanent secretaries here present, for having honored our invitation today. I thank you all, and God bless you all.
Whatever has a beginning, they say must have an end, and we're gradually coming to the end of this very critical town hall meeting. The key takeaway is that the ongoing Ogoni cleanup is the biggest cleanup in Africa, and we must remember that environmental problems resulting from oil spillage and mostly caused by pipeline vandalism affects communities and indeed the nation at large. And so, like we often say, if you see something, say something. Thanks for being part of this great outing, and I'd like to say on behalf of all my colleagues behind the screen, we say a big thank you to all of you for sharing your time with us.
Senators, members of the House of Representatives, representatives of the service chiefs, and our DGs,